he has this general introduction about some of the fundamental beliefs of Judaism, including his famous 13 principles of faith, which are the fundamental principles of the Jewish faith. And then he has also an introduction to the ethics of the fathers, which is he explains a basic outline of how kind of moral development works. So these two introductions are kind of a general overview of like a lot of the underlying philosophical ideas, at least the basic philosophical idea, a lot of Torah thought. And it's a pretty nice conception of them. It's not, it's very similar to what would be explained, let's say, in Tanya of the Chabad work by the Alter Rebbe, the first Chabad Rebbe. And in that work, it would be Shar Yichav Emunah, would be similar to what he explains here in Perek Helek, in his introduction to this chapter about the world to come. And then Likutei Amarim, the first book, Tanya, where it talks more about the application of the philosophy that he talks about in the Gate of Unity and Faith, in the book Likutei Amarim, the collection of thoughts on how to use that in one's divine service. And so that's kind of similar to Rambam's introduction to the fathers. So right now we're going to learn this introduction, Rambam's introduction, or Maimonides' introduction to Perek Helek. And hopefully, James, if you're able to get your microphone working, then you could stop me with any questions or clarifications, stuff like that. And it would help also so I don't feel like I'm talking to the wall. But, okay, so let's get started. So he starts off, I think I'm not going to go through the very beginning. He starts off just talking about how the confusion that people have when it comes to what is the ultimate purpose of learning, studying Torah, and fulfilling the commandments. What is the ultimate reward? What's the ultimate punishment? And he says, in his days, there was a lot of confusion about this topic, even among people that were learned, scholarly individuals. And, he divides it up into 5 different kind of opinions about what is the main reward and the main punishment for fulfilling and not fulfilling the commandments. The first one, he says, is the belief that it's the Garden of Eden, which they believe is a physical place that people get to go and live in a nice garden with good food and nice houses and all that kind of stuff. And someone that doesn't get to go there is the punishment. The second group believes that it's the time of Mashiach, the Messianic era, may immediately be redeemed. That is the ultimate reward. And the punishment for not fulfilling the commandments would be not meriting to be in that time. The third group believes that it's the resurrection of the dead is the ultimate punishment, and not meriting that would be the reward, and not meriting that would be the ultimate punishment. The fourth group says that it's just having, peace and success and tranquility in this world, and or the opposite, having, not a good life in this world. And the fifth group make some sort of combination of those other 4 altogether. And he says all of these have a lot of proof texts from various places throughout Tanakh, throughout the Torah and the prophets and the writings, and different statements of the sages throughout the Talmud and different midrashim, and they all bring support for their views. Okay, and he says that people spend a long time about trying to figure out what it's really going to be like, what's Mashiach going to be like, what's the resurrection of the dead going to be like, and all these things. But people don't really ask so much, like, what is the ultimate purpose that we're trying to accomplish, and what is really the idea of Olam Haba that it speaks about, the world to come? What does that mean when it speaks about that? So I'm going to start over here. Now this is, I don't know if you have the It's this paragraph that begins Va'ata. So I'm going to read it. I'll read it in the original, and I'll translate it, and I'll explain it as we go a little bit. And he's going to bring up a lot of topics here which are very fundamental, and I think will help just give us a framework to discuss all these other issues in Torah law and everything, because we'll see where it's all coming from, that it's coming from. Okay, Va'ata hama'ayin b'sefer zeh. Now, you, my dear reader that is studying this work, I'm going to give you now a metaphor, an analogy for this. And then this will prepare you to understand. I'm going to tell you about this topic. Again, the main topic is what is the ultimate purpose, fulfilling the commandments, and what is the ultimate reward or punishment for not doing so, and what is the idea of Olam Haba, of the world to come. Imagine, or think about, ponder this idea. When a child is very young, you bring him to a teacher to study. In this case, he's speaking to Jewish people that are bringing their children to study Torah. And this is a very beneficial thing for the child, that through study and instruction, he's going to become a properly mature, developed individual and develop his full potential. But now, because the child is very young, and so he's immature, and he doesn't have, his mind isn't really fully developed yet, he's not yet able to really appreciate the benefit that's going to come from all these years of study, and how he's going to develop, and the fact that learning how to read and think and developing his character, he's not able to appreciate how this is going to allow him to really fulfill his potential and really be his true self that he's able to be. And he's not able to really appreciate what is going to come from this, as far as becoming a more perfected, developed person. And once again, this is Maimonides' introduction to a chapter called Helek that discusses in the 10th chapter of Tractate Sanhedrin, where it talks about the world to come. And therefore, his teacher, his mentor, the child's teacher and mentor, because the child doesn't appreciate the intrinsic value of learning and developing his mind and developing his abilities, so therefore he'll encourage him with something that he appreciates according to his age, something that's an age-appropriate reward. And he'll tell him, he'll say, if you study, I'll give you nuts, I'll give you dates, I'll give you a little candy or a little honey. And because of this, it will motivate the child to study and work hard. But not for the actual study itself. He doesn't appreciate why he should want to learn how to read and study and all these things. But he's in his mind, what the child's able to appreciate is the extrinsic motivator of that he's going to be rewarded with getting this candy. And to him, that's something that's really tangible to him, and makes sense that that's something worth working for. But to really put a lot of effort and work into and saying to read, you'll be able to think, and you'll be able to do all kinds of stuff, it's just out of the child's experience. He's not able to appreciate that. And you do want to cultivate, obviously, even from when a child is young, as much intrinsic motivation as you can. You want to cultivate a growth mindset, and a child should have a love for challenges and a love for learning and discovery. But at the same time, there's a certain type of excitement and motivation that you can only get through setting a goal and saying, okay, we're going to have some sort of extrinsic reward that the child can appreciate. V'achilas oisei hamagodim etzla yikara be'enav min akriya v'tayva harbe b'leisavik. And so for the child, being able to eat these candies or these treats is much more precious in his eyes than being able to read or study itself. To him, that is much better than learning how to read. And therefore he feels that it's a burden, and the homework is a burden that he has to do. In order, he's doing it, he's willing to put in the effort to get the benefit that he really cares about, which is this one nut or this one candy. So this is the basic idea, that since the child is too immature to really be properly intrinsically motivated, so therefore he's motivated by something extrinsic. But when the child will mature, it will grow older and more mature, and so now what used to be very precious to him was the candy isn't so important anymore. Now he'll start to want bigger things. So now you'll again motivate him by promising him that if he works hard, he'll get what he appreciates now at his age. His teacher will tell him, study well and I'll buy you a new pair of shoes. Or some other type of clothing that he is excited about. And this will motivate him to, again, to study. Still not, he's not doing it intrinsically because he appreciates the learning itself. He'll do it for those clothes. And so though that article of clothing that he's going to get is more precious in his eyes than the Torah study, and to him that's his ultimate purpose in his study, is in order to get that. And when he'll grow older, he'll become even more mature, so now he'll say, he's not going to be motivated just by the clothes anymore. So now he'll apply himself to, and his desire to, something that's greater than this. And then his teacher will tell him, Lamad Parsha Zai, Perek Helek, study, if you study this portion or this chapter, I'll give you a coin, a shnei dinar, or 2 coins. To get this prize, get the money. And again, the money is more precious to him than the actual study. Because why is he studying? To get the money that he was promised. But when he'll be even more completely mature, he'll also feel like, that's not the ultimate thing, it's really beneath him. He'll want something even more glorious. His teacher will tell him, Lamad, study, he said, study, and you'll become a rabbi and a judge, and people will honor you, and they'll stand up for you, and they'll do what you say. They'll respect you, and you'll be famous in your life and after your death. You'll be like one of these great people. And he'll do it he'll study very hard in order to achieve that kind of honor. And that will be his motivator. The honor and that will come from people, other people praising him and looking up to him. So that's still an extrinsic motivator. And really all of this is disgraceful. It's really to make anything extrinsic to the study, the purpose of a person's study, whatever level they're on. For a little child doing it for candy, and for an adult who might be doing it for the honor, it's really not proper, and it's really a disgrace compared to what it really truly should be. But sometimes, if you have someone that lacks the maturity to appreciate the intrinsic value of learning, you'll have to help them at least do the right thing, even though it's for an ulterior motive that's not for the wisdom itself. And so the person you'll tell the person, why should I study? You say to do it for this other ulterior motive, to do it for the honor. And this is really a mockery of truth, though. But sometimes it's necessary. And this type of study is what our sages describe when they say shalai lishma. It's being studied not for its own sake, meaning it's extrinsic. And so applying this more generally, this is the idea of when a person fulfills the commandments of the Torah or studies Torah, but he's not doing it intrinsically for the value of the mitzvah itself and the value of this Torah study itself. The proper way is that a person should do what's right just because it's right, and should want to know truth just because it's true. And that's called doing it lishma, for its own sake. But if a person is doing it for another reason, for any sort of ulterior motive, whatever that may be, whether it's a physical ulterior motive, or even if it's a spiritual ulterior motive, like, the idea of being successful in this world, or for the soul to be able to go to the Garden of Eden, even physically or spiritually, whatever it is, those are all exterior motives. For some other reason. And our sages have warned us about this. A person should not make the Torah like a crown to glorify oneself with it, nor a shovel to dig with. And in this statement, the sages were hinting at what I've just explained to you. That a person should not place as the ultimate goal and purpose of knowing wisdom, not to get honor, which is the idea of the crown. The crown is a metaphor for getting honor, nor as a way to make money, which is the idea of the shovel to dig with. A person should not study the Torah of God, blessed be He, in order to make a livelihood from it. A person's ultimate goal and pursuit in studying the wisdom of the Torah should just be to know the truth. And that's called doing it for its own sake. And just like with wisdom, so too with truth. The ultimate purpose of truth is just to know the truth. And Torah is truth. And the ultimate knowledge of the Torah is when it is done, when it's kept in. True wisdom of the Torah is not just a theoretical wisdom like studying mathematics or philosophy or something like that. The ultimate wisdom of the Torah is the life with which a person has to live and experience. And that's the ultimate knowledge of the truth of the Torah, is when a person knows it intellectually and experiences it in their daily life. And so if a person is truly spiritually mature, it would be forbidden for him to be improper for him to say, when I do these mitzvahs that God told me to do, in other words, when I follow the good character traits and stay away from transgressions, from sins, which are negative character traits that God has told us not to do, what benefit will I get from it? The fish is because saying that would be the same thing as a child saying, when I study this, what are you going to give me? And I'm mature enough, so then they'll tell him, okay, if you do it, you'll get double play, you'll get this. The fee, person lacks the maturity to doing something intrinsically, doing something for its own sake. And so he's looking for something that is in itself an end, some other end to justify why he should do it, even though this is really enough. Anu Meshivim like his sichlusais, then we answer him according to his immaturity. Like it says in Mishlei in Proverbs, answer the fool according to his foolishness. And our sages have also instructed us about this. A person should not make should really have no ulterior motive as the purpose in serving God and fulfilling His commandments for any other reason. What was said by a truly complete person who was spiritually mature and understood the real truth of these matters, and this is Antikna Shiseichai, who is quoted in Ethics of the Fathers, and there he says, "Al tiu kavodim mishamshin es harav al manasa kabel pras." Do not be like servants that serve the master in order to get a reward. Ela hayu kavodim mishamshin es harav al manasa leila kabel pras. Rather, one should be like a servant that serves his master on condition that he won't get a reward. Actually, there's two versions of this in Perek Helek. One version, which is the more common one, says you should serve the master not on condition to get a reward, meaning that if you get the reward, fine. But the true thing is that if a person, let's say, it would be like if you're doing something for somebody that you really love, if you're doing something for your mother or your spouse or your child, and they wanted to pay you for making them a birthday party or helping them carry packages in or something like that. It's like, no, it's like an insult. If you really care about the person and want to do it just because you love them and just to show that relationship, to downgrade that to some sort of business type of transaction where it's about what I'm going to get out of it in a tangible sense, as opposed to having it be about the actual love and care for the person and just expressing that relationship, would be a disgrace. And so a person that feels that way, that's doing something intrinsically and just appreciates the essential value of doing what's right just because it's right and wanting to know truth just because it's true, would be like, I'm not looking to get any benefit out of it. I want to do it for its own sake. It was what Antigna Sheisech was teaching us, that a person should pursue the truth just for the sake of truth itself. And when a person does this way, when a person is intrinsically motivated, this is what's called serving God out of love. And our sages of blessed memory have said about this. It says in Psalms 112, verse 1, "In your commandments I desired very greatly." Elazar expounded this verse, and he said, that King David was saying, I desired your commandments themselves, not the reward of the commandments. That just the benefit of, basically, we should imagine the Torah and mitzvahs as, let's say, a loving parent that wants to train and educate their child and wants to help them develop good habits and good character traits and develop their nature and their emotions and their character and their mind, so that they can really fully develop their potential and be who they really are and not be life like an animal. And so too, God has instructed us how to conduct our life in His mitzvahs, in His commandments, not for any ulterior motive, but because He gave us a soul, like we'll see, we're going to talk about. He gave each of us a godly spark, and in order to cultivate and bring that full potential out, that inner essential value and potential, and that inner beauty, that inner godly beauty that every single person has been given and endowed by God, in order to fully bring that potential out, we need to cultivate. If a person wants to be a musician, they're going to have to study and practice and have a certain course of, rigorous study and training to develop that, and it's going to take time. And then their inner potential and their inner creativity is going to be able to be fully expressed. They'll have the tools and the training and the discipline they need to fully express what they have to share with the world. And then it's just about being a contributor. And the same thing with, so we'll see about this, but this is the basic idea. And so this is this teaching of the sages based on this verse in Psalms is a very, very clear proof to this idea that Maimonides has been explaining. So he says it's a very clear proof for this idea that I've been telling you. And so this is clearly expresses what we've introduced, this idea. And we have an even greater, even clearer expression of this idea in the midrashic work called Sifrei, the Sifri, which is a collection of mainly halachic midrashim collected for the teaching of Rabbi Akiva. Shema Seimar Hareini Lami Torah B'Shvil She'eya Asher. Lest a person would say, "Let me study Torah so that I should become rich." B'Shvil Shikari Rav, or in order that I should be called rabbi. B'Shvil Shakabel Sachar B'Olam Haba, or so that I should be rewarded in the world to come. Talmud Leimer, therefore it says, "La'avo Hashem should fulfill the mitzvahs out of the commandments, out of love for Hashem, your God. Whatever you do should be only out of love," which is that's intrinsically motivated. It's just for the sake of its own sake. So now this idea has been explained clearly to you. And so now it should be clear that this is the true intention of the Torah, and this is the foundation of the perspective of the sages. Whenever the sages are looking at the Torah and they're explaining it, they're always coming from this perspective. This is really what we're trying to do. That every single person and everything in the world has a godly spark in it that gives it intrinsic value. And the whole purpose of the Torah and the commandments is to help polish and cultivate and bring out that godly core, that godly spark inside of every person, to be able to learn to see it in everything in the world and interact with other people and the things around us in the world in a way that brings out beauty, and that is of its own value. It's bringing out that beauty, bringing out that truth that's in each person in the world. And that's the ultimate thing we're trying to accomplish, and we're trying to get people through studying the Torah and fulfilling the mitzvahs to have that maturity to appreciate the ultimate goal we're shooting for. And one would not ignore this idea. And a person can only ignore this fundamental idea. He's become very confused and very his mind is warped and confused on all kinds of ideas and philosophies that are not proper. Unfortunately, is very commonly the case with many of our religious brethren. But this idea of being intrinsically motivated is the spiritual quality that made Abraham, our father, unique, of blessed memory. That he served God out of love. He did it out of intrinsic motivation. And so this approach to life, to Torah study, to the commandments, should be one should be striving for and trying to achieve. This should be something that's, we might not be there, but every person should place this as their goal that they're trying to work towards. And since our sages recognize that achieving this spiritual level, which is a very difficult thing, and not everyone is going to immediately be able to achieve it, especially now. Now, as we're getting closer to the time of Mashiach, it's becoming much easier. The world is becoming more ready for this. And one of the reasons for that is because we have much more prosperity, and so people don't have to worry as much about just taking care of, needs for survival, and that opens up a person to be able to think more about doing things intrinsically, and we'll get into that. But whatever. Generally, because it was very hard for people to be able to appreciate. And even a person that would be able to achieve this, to do it immediately, it would take a certain amount of training and a certain amount of development and spiritual maturation in order to get to this stage. And so if you would just come to a person and tell a person to do it in this way, you have a problem that like with a child, in order for the person to really appreciate the advantage, let's say, what they gain from learning how to read and learning how to think, they actually have to do the work and learn how to read and learn how to think. And when a person develops their mind, they appreciate what they get out of it. And looking back, it would be terrible for them to give that up and to not have that mental development. Similarly, in order for a person to fully appreciate this kind of spiritual maturity, a person actually has to go through a certain amount of training and development to be receptive to it. And so a person that isn't receptive to it yet, if you try to tell them to do it for this intrinsic reason that they can't appreciate, so then they won't be able to understand it, and therefore their commitment to fulfilling the mitzvahs and everything will not be so strong. They won't be able to do the necessary training and be motivated to do it, and then they'll never experience it, and then they won't know. Therefore, you need to first get a person to do it in order for them to understand it. And this is the idea like we just had in the Torah portion where we read about in Yisro and Mishpatim, how the Jewish people, before receiving the Torah, they said, we'll do, and then we'll understand. That in order to a person has to do it first, then they can understand it. Because a person will only do something if they're going to benefit from it. Or just spare them from some sort of loss. So a person that has not yet developed this type of spiritual maturity to appreciate doing something intrinsically and altruistically, it won't make sense to them. It will be like unthinkable. Why would I do something if what's in it for me? What am I getting out of it? So as an experienced altruism and doing something intrinsically, it's not going to be able to make sense to do something like that. So how can you tell here somebody, let's say somebody is accepting the Torah upon himself, a Jewish person or someone that wants to fulfill the commandments, do these deeds and don't do these things, not out of any fear of punishment, not because of any hope of reward. If you're to tell that, it's very difficult for a person that not every person is going to appreciate truth to the extent that Abraham, our father of blessed memory, did. At least initially, it takes a certain training to experience that. So therefore, the sage is permitted that you could have this initial training stage where you will tell people to fulfill the mitzvahs, fulfill the commandments, in order for them to, take it seriously, to do it because they're going to get reward. And to stay away from sins, out of fear of punishment. And they would encourage them in this vein, and they would continue in this way until the person would develop and mature and be able to recognize the truth. And recognize what is the true path. Just like we do with a child when educating a child. Much like this analogy for this. Now, I'm just going to point out, and he is going to point this out later, he's not saying that all these 5 benefits that he mentioned that people believed in is not true. He's not saying that fulfilling the mitzvahs, the commandments, and studying Torah does not bring the soul to the Garden of Eden, or bring the times of Mashiach, or bring the resurrection of the dead, or bring success in this world and blessings in this world. But that's not really the ultimate purpose of it. That's just a side benefit. It's like, it's true that let's say an artist could make a living from it, but ultimately they should be doing it because of the love of the art and because they have something that they want to contribute to the world. And so in order to devote their time to it, they might need to get paid, but their goal and motivation should be to get a bigger paycheck. It should be to share something beautiful with the world. Okay, let's continue this bit here. And the sages actually rebuked they held him at fault for saying what he said, that a person should serve God like not for reward. And they said about this to him, they said, the sages, you have to be very careful with your words, because even though if a person, you have to make sure that the audience is going to understand it and receive it in the proper way. And if a person's not mature enough to appreciate it and you tell it to them, it could be harmful to them. Like it says in the Ethics of the Fathers. And people don't lose out from fulfilling the commandment for ulterior motives. It's just they're not perfecting themselves and developing spiritual maturity, but at least it's, keeps you out of trouble. It makes you, keeps you from doing terrible things, and it makes you a little bit more of a decent person. That itself is a wonderful thing. And therefore, you want to be very careful not to discourage someone from doing the commandments, even if they're not spiritually mature and don't appreciate the truth of why they should do it. And this makes them, in the habit of doing good things, which is very good, keeps them from, in a way, that's the main thing. And it also, that training helps prepare them to be able to develop the maturity to understand the truth. And this will arouse them to come to know the truth, and they will then return to serve God out of love intrinsically. And this is what our sages of blessed memory said, that a person, even not for its own sake, because by studying it for ulterior motives that will eventually bring a person to appreciate its beauty and do it for its own sake. Okay, so this is a good stopping place to pause here, and then we'll continue, another time, maybe next week we can continue. But just to, recap here, and actually I'm involved in teaching teenagers, and so I see both sides of this very clearly, where for somebody that has a certain type of maturity and you love learning and love challenges and all this kind of stuff, it's very difficult to appreciate somebody that's very tangible and is only going to do something if they're going to get food for it or get paid for it. Unfortunately, there are some people, and but some of the students I work with, and it takes time to help them break out of that and rekindle and cultivate that love for learning and discovery on its own. So sometimes you have to be careful and to present things in a way that's according to their maturity level. On the other hand, you always want to be directing them towards cultivating that intrinsic love and intrinsic motivation. And so this basic framework gives us a foundation of what's really going on in all of the Torah and all of the mitzvahs, and will help us with understanding more as we move on and understanding what's really the idea of a godly soul and everything like that. So the basic idea of it now is just recognizing that there's kind of these three stages, like he's going to spell them out later, that each of us needs to go through in our spiritual journey. In the beginning, we're focused mainly on, we're self-centered, and we're focused on our bodily needs and on survival. And in that stage, the only thing that makes sense to us is something that's going to help us in a very self-centered and bodily way. And it's like, well, what's in it for me? And then at that stage, the main thing is to kind of cage in our animal and just develop certain boundaries and learn how to respect other people's boundaries and create good habit, help us rein in and control our animalistic nature. Then there's a stage beyond that of starting to train ourselves and sensitivity, and then through that we'll eventually come to this higher ultimate stage of maturity where we find the godly spark inside of us and we're able to appreciate doing things intrinsically. At that point, our motivation for doing things is just to be a contributor, and just for the love of pursuing truth, of bringing justice and goodness out into the world and trying to be a contributor and bring goodness to other people and help other people go through this journey. And so that's the ultimate place we want to get to, but it's impossible to do without going through these three stages. And so we're going to see that that's part of the understanding how Torah, all the commandments are designed, and it's also going to, I think, shed a lot of light into the whole process of how conversion works and what's the idea of these different types of Ben Noah and a Ger Toshav and all these type of things relates to these different ideas. So hopefully this will be a beginning of a good introduction, and we'll see how it applies to other things. If anybody has any questions, maybe email them and we can for next time. And thank you all for tuning in. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Rabbi Walters. I hope you can hear me.
Yeah, I hear you.
Sorry, I'm having some trouble. So thank you very much. It was a wonderful share. I can't wait until next week. Hopefully we'll come back and mark where we left off. So thank you to everybody for coming, and thank you to Rabbi Walters. It was wonderful to have him here to teach us about Torah Lishma, Torah for its sake, and teach us about what the Rambam says. So thank you so much, Rabbi.
Sure, and if you find a link to an English translation of this online, we could share it with everyone. That'd be nice.
Yeah, that actually, that's actually what I was doing for a little bit of the shir. I couldn't find it in my Mishnah Torah Hashelem, the Moznayim, the physical.
Right, so because this is not actually part of the Mishnah Torah. Mishnah Torah is his second work that he wrote after this. First, he wrote a commentary on the Mishnah, and then he wrote the Mishnah Torah, which is, and then after that, he wrote his Mara Nevuchim, his Guide for the Perplexed. So those were his three big works.
So I'll have to hunt this down, and then I'll share it with the group. Hopefully, we can get a physical copy or online copy, because this is really wonderful. So
sure.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome. Take care. And like I said, I think that these ideas, are very fundamental to help having the perspective into everything else, and also into the Torah laws later and how it all works.
I totally agree. This is wonderful. Yeah, I don't think most of us have gotten into the Mishnah Torah past the Sheva Mitzvot. So, not only that, but even this sheds light more on the Sheva Mitzvahs. When you read it, the Sheva Mitzvahs this way, when it's Lishma, it makes things a lot different. So.
Right.
And before we go over here, this is
and so also within the whole idea of the Sheva Mitzvahs, there's there's three stages of understanding the purpose of the Sheva Mitzvahs, and it depends. Some of it is just historical, and that there's the stage where the main focus of the Sheva Mitzvahs, whether historically or in a certain culture or for a certain individual, is the first stage. Then there, of just caging in the animal. Then there's the second stage of the mitzvahs being about, training and developing spiritual maturity and refining a person. And then there's the third stage where it's really about contributing something intrinsically to the world. And, so depending on the level a person's at, they'll relate to it different ways, and depending on what the majority of society, where they're holding, is going to depend on how it's applied also. So, we'll see, I think, as we get into it, a lot of the stuff is going to make more sense with this perspective.